Hello and welcome to Season 2 of 180 Degrees. For the next 8 episodes, we're sharing stories from people across Ireland working towards a cleaner energy future. We chat to the people who are making a real difference in the area of sustainable transport, home energy, and in our communities. We hear from businesses who are cutting carbon emissions, and we learn how energy research is shaping Ireland's future. 180 Degrees is brought to you by the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland and is supported by the Government of Ireland. Hello, I'm your host Louise Ryan, and joining me today is Céline Reilly, Manager from Dublin City Council, and Alan Ryan from the Public Sector team in SEAI. In this episode, we will be looking at the public sector and specifically what they are doing to meet their ambitious climate targets. Céline works with Dublin City Council on a number of exciting initiatives aimed at making Dublin sustainable and energy efficient for all its citizens. Alan works with public sector organisations around Ireland to help them reach their climate targets. Welcome to the podcast, Céline and Alan. It's lovely to have you both here.
Good morning, Louise.
Good morning, Louise. How are you?
Good. Right. So, Céline, I'm just going to kick off with you. So, Céline, do you want to tell us a little bit about your role in Dublin City Council?
Sure, Louise. Well, I suppose my main role would be looking at climate action. And as part of today's conversation, I suppose part of that is energy management. I look at air quality, which also links into climate action and energy management. I look at waste management and the circular economy. So I suppose I have a very broad scope of work, but all of them, I think, actually link in under this umbrella that we now have of climate action. So I get a good overview of what's needed across the organisation and across the city in order to deliver on the kind of targets we have, which are obviously the 50% target for energy improvements and a 50% target of greenhouse gas emissions. So as an overall job, it's a very interesting job because it's covering so many interesting areas. But B, it's one that where you're influencing a lot of different things in the city, and so it's you need to bring a lot of things together to actually make sure that we are going in the right direction to achieve what we all want, which is like a better city.
The Public Sector Energy Programme set out targets for 2020, which you've achieved already. But explain to us how you developed your energy management programme initially.
Well, I suppose, Louise, first of all, we have a great support, I suppose, corporately and from politicians, our councillors. And that's really important, I suppose, for any public sector body that they get the support of the people who are, they're managers, essentially. And I suppose what we did way back was we worked with the councillors, worked with our teams on the ground to look at where we wanted to get to. A lot of the help was really with our energy agency. We have an energy agency called Codema, and I suppose they're very helpful to us. They help us set out where we want to get to, how we'll get there. So back in about 2016, we started doing energy reviews. I think that's really the most important thing if you're going to get to the targets of 2030. You have to see where you are now, you have to see where you want to get to, and then you want to see how you're going to get there. So with the help of our energy agency and our in-house energy managers, we looked at all our energy bills. We set up a really good energy management platform, Energy Elephant, so we could see the bills for every single building, every single user in the authority. We said, who are the very significant users? And then we said, they're the biggest ones. We'll get the biggest bang for her buck by attacking those first. So the biggest opportunities, I suppose, would have been our public lighting. Other big opportunities would be our leisure centres. So they're really big energy users. And we said, what can we do to look at those? We have 47,000 lights out in the streets. So we said, we'll look at those. And to date, we've done 9,000 of them. And over the next few years, we'll do the rest. We also looked at our leisure centres. These are something the public use a lot. And as well as being very resource intensive, I suppose they're also areas where we can show the public what we're doing as well. And that's really important going forward.
Yeah, because this is for everyone. This is for your citizens. And obviously leisure centres, to make them more, I suppose, comfortable and energy efficient for everyone is really important.
Exactly. So by doing those, you're actually getting something that's outward looking and people can see the results of it. These leisure centres have been very, very good for us revenue-wise as well, I have to say. So they're, from a public sector point of view, for other local authorities, for other public sector bodies, what we call the energy performance contracts are really, really good. You share the risk of kind of savings and with the contractor, but that gives the contractor the incentive to actually perform very well. So we reduced energy costs by 40%. So far, we've saved about 200,000 a year. We hope to save about $1.5 million over the 8 years of the contracts. So on every front, that's a really win-win situation. It shows the opportunity that's there for energy efficiency. The targets of like this 1.5 degrees, which is what we're all aiming for and why we're doing all of this, is important. But really, you got to bring it back down to what makes people passionate, what would make people want to do it. And I think when they see like revenues coming back into the community or revenues coming back in to make facilities better as a result of energy efficiency savings, well, then, that's a good thing for everybody.
And what was the most challenging part of that process then, Céline?
I suppose back originally, it would be getting people on board to see the value of what you're doing, to see that it's not, as you had said earlier, maybe it's not a negative thing, that it's a really positive thing, that every manager can save money to put back into services, that when you go out to the public, that people can see that actually the quality of life as a result of some of the stuff we do gets better. If we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the air quality is better. That's a better thing for the city as a whole. And at the end of the day, we're not just looking at targets. We're looking at, can we make the city a better place? Can we make it a place people want to work in, want to live in, want to visit eventually when we can visit again after COVID? And where people, where we want businesses to invest. If we can be seen as a green, energy efficient city, then we are much more likely to get the very big service providers in, like the Googles, the Amazons, or other big bodies. And that's good for the economy. So all around, it's just energy efficiency is just a way of developing lots of good things about the city.
And what are some of the energy efficiency initiatives that DCC has rolled out?
One that we're most proud of and most keen, I suppose, to keep going with would be our retrofitting. So Dublin City Council, I have about 25,500 homes, social housings, a combination of flats and houses. And over the last number of years, thanks to a very proactive energy efficiency team in our housing department, we've managed to retrofit about 70% of our houses. That's nearly 9,000 houses with central government, EU funding and SEAI help. And as a result of that, the people in those homes have saved about 46 million in energy bills. A lot of those families were in fuel poverty. So this is a massive achievement. And it's again going back to the opportunities that are there if you look at energy efficiency. In some of the schemes, people have actually been in tears saying how the comfort levels that have kind of come about as a result of the energy efficiencies that we've introduced have just been amazing. And the comfort level, the increase in comfort levels for people as a result of this is just so great. So that's one of the projects that I feel that the City Council can be most proud of. And again, it was developed with yourselves, Alan, and the central government to help us get through this massive numbers of houses kind of countrywide. But we're making a good start here in the city.
Absolutely.
And then you would have also done your leisure centres, energy performance contracting projects. They had a huge saving, hadn't they?
Well, in terms of revenue savings, they're really, really good. And in terms of the carbon, I think over the lifetime of these projects, we're going to be saving about 1,000 tons of carbon. So they're very effective. A lot of work went in, and I think the teams that worked on those between our energy agency, Codima, and in-house, our energy manager, Cormac, they put a lot of work into to get those projects up and running. They're not simple projects, but when we got it up and running, it's actually hugely beneficial, not just in terms of the energy efficiency, but also and the revenue, obviously, but also in terms of the staff and what they do in terms of maintaining the buildings. So what we have is a contractor that that actually invests in improving all the M&E or different energy efficiency measures in the buildings. And as a result of that, they get compensated for the monies they put in, but we also save in terms of the money that we had originally been spending on maintenance and on the energy bills. So really, really, it was innovative, I think, for public sector bodies like ourselves. And again, I think because we're the capital city, we're the biggest local authority, we want to be innovative. Other projects we do with, say, our Smart Dublin office, where we're lucky enough to have an office that's looking just at innovation in the city. So again, going forward, that's going to be an area where we'll try to build on these projects and see what other innovation can we bring to the table to reduce our energy costs. In our biggest building, the civic offices, where we got the ISO 50001, thanks to very active staff members there. But we'll be looking to improve on that now. We'll be looking at LEDs throughout. We'll be looking at having CHP there to try and reduce the costs. Other projects, I suppose, ones that are kind of in the pipeline, so to speak, and that's a very important part of energy management, having a pipeline of projects. You need to know where you're going. How are you going to address the gap between now and 2030? We have a gap of about 6,000 tons of carbon, so it's a lot. Again, with Codemo, we're looking at an energy master plan to see where, for ourselves and in the city, we can see where there's the greatest energy use, where there's waste energy being used. And for ourselves in the city, we also look at, say, our other buildings. What can we do? Can we look at solar? So we're looking at about 80 buildings in the city to see if we can use those for solar and green roofs, and then feed that back into the grid eventually. So we would have like a solar farm. And because our renewables, of course, are so important going forward, and that we're so far back in terms of renewables, this is a really important to try and develop those for ourselves going forward.
Céline, I'm struck by in local authorities, you have your own energy use and then you highly influence the energy use of your community. So it sounds like you've done a lot of projects yourselves to achieve your own targets. And then you've done a lot of projects for your communities and your housing and your businesses to save energy. Amongst all of them, what was probably the most successful, do you think? Was it your public lighting? Was it your own energy use in your energy performance contracts in your leisure centres, which I believe saved up to 38 or 40%? Or has it been in your community work?
Well, I think going forward, Alan, the most important thing will be the community work, because the area that we control is quite small relative to the overall usage, the overall reaching of targets. So what we need to influence, I suppose, as a local authority, we influence. We have 1,000 different services, so we get into everybody's lives somewhere, whether they like it or not. A lot of the time, and I suppose a big part of going forward will be community engagement. And how do we actually get people on board to actually want to do the projects that are actually giving them the opportunities to save the energy? So a really important one was one that you yourselves are running, which is the sustainable energy communities. And I think that's going to become increasingly important going forward, because we're going to be looking at decarbonisation as being the key to reaching targets and reaching zero energy by 2050. So already we've got like communities in my own area and in other areas in the south of the city where communities have come together with local businesses, and in our own case with a very big hospital, and they're seeing how can they work together with those big businesses to help each other decarbonize, as they say, in the community. So in the case of the ones, I think it's at Ringsend in Irishtown, there's a cafe there it's carbon zero, they say. So whilst that's a really small amount in the overall scheme of things, everybody that comes into that cafe hear about this, and then they go and they talk about it. So I think those are the kind of projects going forward that we will get a lot of value out of, and we will actually start to deliver on the targets, because more and more people will then be saying, well, we want to do it in our area. And I think that's really where the important piece is going forward. We're very proud of the projects, as you said, we've done in-house, but if we are to achieve nationally and citywide the kind of better quality of air, better quality of life, and to help reach that 1.5 degree target, or below that target, we all need to be working with communities. We need to work with businesses too. I mean, it's really important the businesses start looking at their the way they manage. And as part of that, we in the City Council are working on a project called MODUS, where we're training small and medium-sized businesses to actually look at sustainability, look at green procurement, look at how they can actually cut back their costs for energy efficiency. So that's a really important scheme. And I think if we expand on that going forward, that can, again, influence a lot of other people. And that's, I suppose, the secret now, leveraging all the different avenues we have to ensure we get the maximum coverage across the communities of people who want to actually take part in this big opportunity to make life better in the city.
Perfect. I think, Céline, the business you were talking about there is the Fair Play Cafe, isn't it, in Ringsend, which is
That's
a
right.
fantastic business.
Yeah.
And then, Alan, I wanted to ask you as well. I think Céline mentioned it there, that term decarbonisation. It's a word that we're hearing more and more about. What does it mean exactly for anyone listening who is wondering?
Well, you save all the easy questions for me,
I know,
Louise.
yeah.
Thanks. I suppose in simple terms, this is a term that's only really come to light really in the last 6 months to a year, really driven by the climate action plan, I would suggest. Is probably very relevant in the private sector, and it's now becoming a common term within the public sector. And a lot of public sector bodies are gearing up for this and starting to plan long term for this. So in simple terms, it means we use no carbon or very little carbon in our businesses. And there's many different sources of carbon in the businesses that we use. The most recognized one is energy related carbon. So that's what SEAI is about. So that's carbon that comes from burning fossil fuels in our buildings, like in oil and gas, fossil fuels in our transport systems like diesel and petrol. These will be all known, and they're relatively easy to measure and track. And then there will be non-energy related carbon emissions that we use within our product streams, our supply chain, etc. They're a little bit harder to measure. There's different protocols to measure all these different types of footprints and carbon footprints, etc. Under the Climate Action Plan, the public sector have a 50% reduction in carbon emissions from energy-related carbon by 2030. So that's going to be a strong target. SEAI will be measuring that.
Yeah, not an easy target either.
No, and depends on how the target will be set. It still has to be finally agreed by government. But if that's set against direct fossil fuels, that means all our fossil fuels within our buildings will have to be reduced by 50% by 2030. And that's a huge undertaking. So that will be converting oil and gas in buildings into either heat pumps or biomass or different solutions. So it's a huge undertaking. I suppose we know, or maybe the audience don't know, that electricity is decarbonizing itself. So if you use electricity, it will naturally start to decarbonize because the grid will use less carbon. There will be less carbon emitted, so there will be less fossil fuels used by 2030. They're looking at a 70% reduction in 70% renewables by 2030, which equates to about a 60% reduction in carbon intensity for a unit of electricity.
Okay.
So if you use a unit of electricity now, it'll be 60% less carbon by 2030. So I suppose the main issue will be measuring the fossil fuels in our buildings and our transport systems, and reducing that. That'll be the hard part. The electricity will be decarbonizing anyway. And I suppose a new concept to get our heads around is this concept of a carbon budget. It's been muted within various bills and policies lately, but that basically means that you have a set amount of carbon that you can use to do your businesses. So by 2030, public sectors, bodies will have a set amount of energy-related carbon they can use. So even if health increases the amount of hospitals and beds, even if we increase the amount of water treatment we have, we'll still have to achieve a certain carbon budget by 2030. So that'll be a strong new game in town that we'll have to deal with.
And what then, Alan, if public sector organisations surpass that carbon budget? Will there be penalties, or how will that be managed, or do we know yet?
We don't know yet. So within energy efficiency at the moment, public sector bodies have to achieve a 33% energy efficiency target by 2020. And that's tracked by SEAI. And that's reported every year. And so the annual report comes out, and it's the degree to which it's picked up is the degree to which public bodies feel the pain. But there will be a lot of self-policing by public bodies. They want to do well. They want to do the right thing. It's in the nature of the public sector. So they'll be looking for solutions. It's harder for the public sector possibly to go out and engage with marketplaces, procurement rules, etc. But they do want to do the right thing. They want to comply, and they want to achieve these targets. And there is a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses as well. So if someone is leading, it sends a clear signal, a leadership signal to the rest. I can do this. So hopefully there won't be a need for these stronger implications if targets aren't achieved.
Sure. Well, I think if everyone is like Céline in Dublin City Council, we won't have anything to worry about. Can I ask you both then, how have you kind of started the conversation around decarbonisation in the public sector?
I suppose as a sector, we have been looking at our vision as a sector. What are the local authorities' vision for 2030? And as part of that, as a central level, we've produced a document that says we're all going to be delivering on this and we're committing to delivering on it. And as Alan said, we are really, really keen and anxious that we will be leaders in this in the local authorities and in the public sector. And it behoves us to be so. We deliver services throughout the whole community. We have a network through all communities. So it's really important that we show the way forward. But as part of that, and Alan would be involved in this also, there's been a development by some of the groups we work with. We have a climate action office and we have the energy agency. So they've been looking at what does decarbonisation mean for us? And one of the projects we're looking at is a nicely named one, I think, called the Tomorrow Project. And that's where we're going to be working with other European cities to see what does decarbonisation mean throughout those places and what can we learn from those. And we will be drawing up what we call a transition roadmap to actually get us to 2030 and get us to 2050. So we look at what projects, what do we need to put in place, as Alan was saying earlier, in different areas that will actually allow us to decarbonise, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And as he also said, the climate plan says all of those local authorities have to identify under an Action 165 a zone where we will develop decarbonisation. So it's really important for us that our development plan shows that and says, what does that mean for us? So when we're going out, people are really keen to be involved. I mean, last Sunday morning, I went for a walk in my local area, and the people who are involved in this sustainable energy community are also out counting the trees. They're out counting trees so that, we can see, do we need more? Or have we got the pollinators? Have we got the ones that are best for the area we're living in? So people are very keen to be involved, and it's really a matter now of tapping into that. And that's why something like a Tomorrow Project, I think, gives us this is where we want to go. This is our vision for going forward. And across the country, I think all local authorities and other public sector bodies are thinking along this way as well. What is it? What can we do to make our places better so that we're actually delivering on this and decarbonising, getting rid of the fossil fuels, but trying to put things in place of it, like that just transition that people talk about, so that it's not a crash for people, but it's actually something that they can have a springboard to something better rather than, falling off the edge.
Can I ask you actually, Céline, about the Tomorrow Project? Is that kind of the idea where Dublin will be paired with another European city, or is it more that you'll kind of share the learnings from a number of cities around Europe?
Yeah, well, we're with 5 other cities. There's 6 of us, and it's a matter of together developing this roadmap that I talked about for each of the cities, together with citizens and local stakeholders. So it's not just the local authorities that are doing this; it's actually a community-wide, and we're just starting it now. The Energy Agency are going to be, doing workshops to try and get people involved and to see how. Because what you want at the end of the day is that people are coming to you to say, we want to do this because they're the best projects. They're the ones that succeed.
Yeah.
And then we will be looking at using part of Dublin as a pilot for this transition roadmap to see what can we deliver with it and can we really deliver the 2050 zero targets that we all want.
Wow, I think that's so exciting, and I can't wait to hear more about it. Alan, I just wanted to ask you there as well. So if you're if someone else from another public sector organisation is listening and maybe is a little bit behind where Céline and Dublin City Council are, what would you kind of say to them and how they would start the conversation around decarbonisation?
Well, in typical Irish terms, I'm going to answer your question by saying the same things you said in the question. How would you start? I think you just need to start. So you need to get your head around it and go out and research the concept. Attend in SEAI. We have a lot of best practice events. We have a whole networking and online forum for public sector. Get yourself involved in that. There's going to be a lot of conversations and workshops coming up over the next 6 months to really get people just think about it, start a dialogue about it, start to understand what it's about. You mightn't even be able to get your head around achieving anything or what needs to be done. It's really just understanding what it's about. And we run a few courses at the moment on energy basics, on what is a kilowatt hour. Get yourself into that if you don't know. And then we'll be starting courses next year on how this will be measured, on what we call carbon basics. So what is all these terms, all these protocols, especially energy related ones? We'll be rolling that out in a lot next year. And I suppose the other one that's getting started is just try to start measuring it. SEAI already tracks your energy related carbon on the M&R system. Familiarize yourself with that. And the other on non-energy related carbon, begin to just start thinking, how am I going to measure it? So for those that are fairly ahead of the game, they're involved in other reporting protocols, they're pretty familiar with it. For those who are only getting started, it's start getting your head around it and start to measure.
Brilliant.
Céline, how do you and Dublin City Council inspire and educate other public sector bodies to do more?
Well, first of all, I suppose I'm not sure that we need to do much, actually, in terms of... So last week, you yourselves held an event where you brought a lot of public sector bodies together. And there's fantastic work going on around the country. The education are looking at how can they make their buildings better for all our kids going to school. The health sector looking at how can you make the hospitals, the public health centres, how can you improve those buildings, again, so that the experience for people is better. So a lot of public sector are already, well on their way there. And I suppose from our point of view, what inspires us is what's the vision for the city? So what's the vision for any one of us? It'll be different, I suppose, for everyone. For us, the city is our driving force. How can you make that the better place to live? There'll be other local authorities in the country where there'll be a slightly different approach. And it's to capture that. It's to capture what makes people passionate and what makes people care enough. And then roll those projects out and work with the people who are. I mean, they often say, working with people who kind of make you feel better is good. When you work with communities who are enthusiastic, you want to do more. And I think that's what public sector bodies find anyway, because that's most of our job is dealing with people. It's actually working in communities, working with businesses. So that's how we approach it. I think what's important to people, what do we want to make work, and go from there.
Yeah, I love that idea of making it a better place to live, and that being your kind of starting point.
Yeah, because all public sector bodies are set up to serve the public. So your core mission is to achieve your service objectives and become more energy efficient. And where the two of them align, that's where people get very passionate. You're saving a lot of energy, you're contributing to your targets, but you're also improving the service for your clients.
Absolutely. Céline, I want to ask you, and Alan, feel free to come in here too. I think it's a really interesting one. You're obviously doing a lot already, but what more can be done over the next decade to reach these targets and I suppose to improve that quality of life and to improve Dublin as a city?
Oh, I suppose there's always things to do. Currently, I suppose we've in a related area, which is air quality, not directly, but a related area for emissions. We've signed up to the thing called the Breathe Life campaign, and that's so that we can improve our air quality or work towards air quality at the World Health Organization standards rather than the European Union standards. So that's a challenge for us going forward because that ties into transport. So how do we actually stop so many people wanting to be in cars? And how do we make that transition from cars and fossil fuels to more sustainable public transport, pedestrianisation, cycling, and electric cars? Obviously, electric vehicles is part of the challenge going forward as well. Can we roll that out to the infrastructure that we need in order to allow people to have electric vehicles? The big part of the government's strategy to reach our targets is to roll out this EV strategy. That's a challenge for us, though. It's a challenge to get people out of cars. And it's particularly so, I suppose, now with COVID, where there's the hesitancy about public transport. So that's a challenge, but we relish challenges. And I think it's one that actually has a good outcome if we can actually get that right mix of sustainable transport and increase people using either cycling in the city, pedestrianisation in the city, car sharing in the city. So that's one challenge. The housing is obviously another challenge for us whilst we're doing our own. And that is, for ourselves, even the flats is a big challenge. We've got to try and convert a lot of those and upgrade those throughout the city. A lot of red brick terraces, a lot of terraced housing, quite difficult, as Alan would know, to do the retrofits. But I think we will learn from the SEAI scheme, the Sustainable Energy Communities. That will help us. How can we address those best? So I suppose those are our two biggest challenges, would be the transport and the retrofitting of the housing. And I think probably countrywide, there's maybe some other ones like agriculture and those, but for us in the city, they'd be the main ones.
Wow, really interesting. Alan, do you want to come in there and just talk a little bit more about what the public sector in general can do over the next decade to reach these targets?
Yeah, Louise, there's a huge amount of work the public sector can do. Obviously, targets that they need to achieve. So they'll need to begin to start to think about how they can achieve them. But there's still a lot of potential in the public sector. We issue an annual report every year into what the public sector do. They're broadly meeting their targets. We're at 27% based on 2018 data. So we know there's an awful lot done on energy management. In fact, the event that Céline was talking about last week was an event we were given to showcase Ireland, what happened in the public sector, to our EU colleagues. So there's a lot of energy management work being done in the public sector, an awful lot of work controlling low cost, no cost solutions. A lot of public bodies have really got that under control. And there's been this continuous investment. So for some, it's been a lot of investment. For some, it's been just ticking away in investment. And I think over the next 10 years, it'll be ramping up resources and ramping up investment to achieve all that potential that's there. So a lot done, more to do.
A lot done, more to do. How is SEAI supporting public sector organisations then, Alan, to decarbonise? Can you just tell us a little bit more about that for anyone who's listening?
Sure. The main vehicle we have is called our partnership programme, where the public sector body, through their chief executive or managing director, commits to achieving the targets, and SEAI commits to helping them. And it's a quid pro quo type service. The more the public body tries to do and achieve, the more we try and help them. And that's centred around three core teams. Energy management, helping them to embed good energy management practices, either 50,001 or our energy map programme, helping them develop a project pipeline, so do assessments, find out how far away they are from the target, doing what we call a gap to target exercise. What projects could help close that gap? So a lot of advice and support to help build that project pipeline. Measuring performance through the M&R system. Are they good? Can they improve? We deliver all that through a team of energy advisors, which is all free. So again, the more the public body commits to, the more we can offer. The other one that's happened over the last 2 to 3 years is our Pathfinder supports. So this is monies for resources, for bureaus or for energy resources to help do projects and manage projects, and pilot projects, capital support for pilot projects. And that's geared towards mobilising and getting ready for large-scale projects. So there's examples within the health sector where they hired a couple of engineers. They started doing behavioural change programs with the OPW, and that's now leading on to pilot projects, trying to learn how do you decarbonise an acute hospital that is a huge boiler load. Is there a solution, a decarbonised solution? So that money will will help pilot a decarbonised solution for a hospital or healthcare. So that's very tailored, very strong engagement for those supports to different public sector bodies, and they're starting to happen now across a lot of sectors. Then there's all our normal grant programs that are there for businesses, for housing, for communities. And I suppose generally just come and talk to us for advice and engage with us. There's a lot of networking happening. There's a lot of workshops for public sectors, a lot of training, keeping the dialogue going, networking. It's hard to do now in this COVID thing, but it's still kept going.
Just an extra challenge.
Yeah. That's our bread and butter, is just keeping the dialogue going. The people sharing ideas. Céline getting up and talking to other people and sharing what she's doing. That's a lot of the bread and butter.
Brilliant. I want to actually finally ask the two of you. I was going to ask what are the biggest challenges of meeting the 2030 targets, but I suppose if we can flip that and just ask what are the biggest opportunities if we do meet the 2030 targets?
Yeah, no, I suppose the opportunities, I think we've been talking about, the opportunity is that like life and quality of life can be so much better if we meet these targets. And I suppose I'd also like to say that maybe things that people could do to really realize where we're going is to start looking at their own carbon counting. We asked that question at a recent event, and people came up with all kinds of various things. But to know what you're doing yourself so that you can see the opportunity in your own life by carbon counting your electricity, you'll see, next week, next month, I'll aim to have it that little bit better so that I've improved my energy efficiency myself.
Yeah.
The whole community doing that. We're moving towards the target without kind of even realizing it. And as an opportunity, you've saved on your bill. So these are opportunities for the individual. There's opportunities for us as a local authority. We've 28,000 staff across the country. There's opportunities there for each one of those for themselves, but to be ambassadors and encourage everybody else. That's an opportunity that we have it's a win-win, the opportunity of energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction. Life gets better as a result of it. And it's, whilst we have to address the just transition, while we do have to understand that there will be issues for companies, for people, where their jobs may no longer be the jobs they had in the past, there are so many opportunities going forward if we can actually work towards them properly and get the training in and get people's minds in that direction, that it's an opportunity and not a disaster for people. And SEAI are doing great work actually with us on this, so to make sure I acknowledge that at this stage, Alan. The amount of support that SEAI give to the public sector is phenomenal, and it's really useful and has actually helped all of us to marshal our thoughts and actually get a very clear way of addressing this issue, which is like one of the biggest things of our time. And it's an organized way SEI have of saying, you measure, you know where you are, you look at your glide path, you look at your gap, you put in your project pipeline, and you know where you're going, and we'll help you get there. So I'd just like to acknowledge that because it really is, it really helps so much for all of us.
That's great feedback. Thanks, Céline. I think going to your question there, Louise, if we look forward in 2030 and we look back, we look forward to how we'll be living, there's just, as Céline is saying there, it's just alignment of the energy mission we have to do and just living better lives. So in 10 years' time, we should be living in more comfortable buildings. Like the big thing of the COVID thing is we can work from home. We don't need to be traveling. We don't need to be expending energy. So better ways of life balance while still doing the services we need to provide. So Dublin City Council need to provide services to their communities. How can they improve that service and do it with less energy? And that's the core. So if we look back in 2030, we shouldn't be restricting ourselves. We should be able to provide better services using less energy. When I was an energy manager in private industry a number of years ago, the concept was energy conservation, which was you turn the lights off and you work in the dark. Whilst we're now looking at energy efficiency is the concept. You still do the same amount of work or you work harder, but you use less energy. You create more windows so you don't need to turn on the lights. Change the layouts of rooms. So it's all simple stuff, but it's amazing how this alignment of it can lead to having better things and not restricting ourselves. And of course, it's reality. It's the reality. If we want to achieve Paris Accords and we want to achieve a vision where we can live within those 2 degrees or 1.5 degree increase, this is the reality of life. We're going to have to live with a carbon budget.
Fantastic. Thanks, Céline and Alan. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the 180 Degrees podcast today. I think we've seen that there's a lot of challenges to overcome for 2030 and beyond. But I think with people like Céline at the helm, the future is definitely looking bright. Thank you both very much. Thanks for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, then please like, share and subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening now. You'll find previous episodes on our website, seai.ie/podcast, along with information about our grants and supports. See you next week.